Hi everyone and welcome to my channel Karoline's Knits. Obviously my name is Karoline and I am joining you from Scotland where I live with my partner Ben and our dog Vela, who's very stressed by me making this video, so she might make a few appearances today. Vela and I are home alone having a girls' night. Aren't we? We're having a girls' night. So hopefully she won't be too disruptive, but I film these videos every year and they're always my most popular, so if you are joining me for the first time, welcome. I hope you'll stick around or at least enjoy seeing what I've made this year. As usual, we've hit that season where you have to live with bad lighting conditions unless you film in a like 1 hour window a day where everything isn't great, but currently we've having so much rain that basically it's always grey. So there isn't really much time. So I've decided to accept the sub-ideal filming conditions and I'm standing in the nice corner of a room, but hopefully it will still give you a feel for what all the garments look like on my body. For reference, I can't remember the sizes of everything I've knit, but I usually pick between an XL to a 2XL. I'm usually somewhere in that size range. This year I've decided to wear this leather skirt, which is actually a Christmas present. It is from Marks and Spencer's and I'm drinking 19 Crimes wine, which is very, very nice. And I might get wine teeth throughout this as well, but we're all friends here, right? I have made enough of these videos now that there's actually videos showing everything I have ever made while I knew how to knit. And my one last year, I feel like was really the one where I moved from being a novice knitter. In May this year, I've knitted for 2 years, and I feel like last year I really pushed myself and tried lots of new techniques, and I feel like I really started to feel braver in trying things and truly feeling like I was becoming an advanced knitter. And I feel like this year in some ways you can see that with my projects, but also I feel like this year has been very dominated by test knits, so I will show you all of those. Also, what I should say is that quite a lot of the yarn this year was sponsored, which is obviously a massive privilege to have that for my test knits. But always for full transparency, I'll do my best to mark it and mention it as I go, but I might miss some. And I should say something about the colour palette, because if you watched last year's video, I said that something I had learned in the past year was that I had a tendency to be drawn to slightly brighter colours, but actually what I wear are much more neutrals, and so I was picking all of these bright pinks and all of these shades that maybe I would have been better suited just picking, like, you know, neutral colours. So I can't hold up all the knits at once, I don't think, but I've sorted them. So this is very much the first half of the year, and you can probably see by the colour palette that we are still very much in the warm tones. We have some pinks, those kind of shades, and then second half, here we have sort of more towards the second half of this year. And I don't know if you can tell, but it just got completely cold. I definitely discovered that grey seems to be a colour that I'm actually quite drawn to wear, and so I've quite enjoyed knitting more in that this year. So that's sort of the colour palette. And also I should say, when you're watching these videos, it's hard not to like compare how productive have you been compared to like knitters you think you're on the same levels as, or knitters that you think you're better or worse, etc. And I'm just going to be honest and say this has definitely not been my most productive year. I finally, after being engaged for 3.5 years, yes, that's right, 3.5 years, my partner and I finally got married this summer, and obviously that's a massive life event, and I just did not have the same amount of time to knit. I just, in the weeks coming up to the wedding, I just didn't really feel like it. When we finally sat down in the sofa at night, I was so tired and just wanted to relax, and so this is probably one of my least productive years, if I'm being honest. But Anywho, enough intro, enough talking, let's get going. So the first sweater that I finished is fittingly called the first sweater. This was also, this was the first test knit of the year. Now this one, I had done most of the knitting in the year prior, so it was finished like over the Christmas holidays, and this is a designed by my friend Hive Knits, Lissy. This is what it looks like. Now I definitely made some mistakes with this. First one being that my gauge was actually much bigger in the final garment than on my gauge swatches, which isn't uncommon for me. I tend to knit much looser when I'm not swatching, so I've learnt my lesson, especially after this, and I now often make sure I have 1 or 2 stitches more than I should for gauge in my gauge swatches so that they fit better. It's knitted in this like lovely cinnamony colour called, this is Filcolana Ovetta and Telia in red squirrel. It's a little bit more true squirrel coloured in real life, I would say. But yes, I did most of that. I need to redo the elastic because I just didn't really know how to do it, and I've done it in the wrong place. So instead of doing the elastic at the top half here, I have done it in the bottom half, and that kind of gives almost like a sticky up colour in the bag kind of sense, not like a tight fitting one, but easily salvageable. I do wish I had added a little bit more length. This is where my belly button is, so we're basically just covering the belly button in this, and I do wish it had a little bit more length, but I love the sleeves in half fisherman's rib. So that was project number 1. You better believe that I am tidying up as we go, because I am not tidying all of this up when I'm done filming, so there's going to be a few cuts, and that's what I will be doing. Rightio, the second finished object of this year, of 2022, is this. This is sweater number 1 from My Favourite Things Knitwear, knitted in a colour so bright I don't know if any camera will ever pick it up. Oh, there we go. Just checking everything looks nice. So here we go. So this is knitted, obviously with the bright lights, everything always looks less opaque. I think it does in real life. So currently in this artificial lighting, I think it's looking a lot less opaque than I feel like you could probably get away with. This was yarn I had in my stash that I bought in Denmark. So it's from the shop called Tendergrund, and it's their own silk mohair. If I'm not mistaken, the colour is 41, and it is this proper bright bluish neon pink. Now I do quite like aspects of this. Like I always really liked these like quite big balloon sleeves. You can see it's a nice raglan. However, I don't like this. I don't like how it has a tendency to ride up and do this. I don't think that's a very like flattering shape on me, and I basically, in the pattern, the sleeves are like this length, but I did not like that at all. So I lengthened them, but I think I should have lengthened them more. And finally, I think it's just like my hair isn't very forgiving. I think, I don't know if I've turned this around the wrong way, but I don't know if you can tell, but like the stitches just has a tendency to split and not sit very close together, which I just don't really like. And to be honest, as much as this is like one of those things that always does well on Instagram kind of sweaters, I think I didn't really think through when I'd wear a bright pink sweater, because I have quite a lot of knits and this just seems to like, I'm not really sure what it works for. It's still in that sheddy phase. It is probably something I'd wear probably for work, I think, but then as I said, I'm not so keen on how it fits, so this was probably a bit of a fail. And I feel like this was like, this yarn I bought before I knew I needed more neutrals, and I feel like this is like a peak making choices based on what I was drawn to more than thinking through what it was. in retrospect, I wish I'd used a yarn not for full garment, but for like an accessory of some kind, or maybe a stripe in something, so it's still, I can still enjoy the colour, which I love, but maybe tone it down a little bit. That's also why this doesn't have really any wear to it, because it's only been worn 2 or 3 times, I think. Next up, we have a sweater that I bought the yarn for when I was back home in Denmark over that Christmas. This was all the rage. From memory, I feel like it might have been like quite recently released, that winter. This is the marble sweater from Petite Knit, and I knitted this in 1 strand of Lana Gatto Anise, in this kind of, you can see a neutral creamy colour, and 1 strand of Chunky Mohair from Gepard. It has a slightly different name, but essentially it's hand dyed by them, which was a yarn that I found in a yarn shop. I think it was on 50%, and so this sweater, which in the original version is like well over £100 in yarn, I think all in all was about £50–60. Could be wrong, rough estimate. I wore a lot of yarn that December back home in Denmark, and I actually think this is the only thing I've knitted up of all that yarn, so yes, I definitely need to bring down my stash. But anyway, the marble sweater is really quite a basic shape. You have a raglan sweater, it has a bit of short rows right here in the back, it has this like quite chunky colour, these like quite wide sleeves. I think there are a few decreases, but like we're talking minimal decreases. Now, every time before I film these videos, as you've well have discovered, I've talked about the wear of the 2, but I also don't prep my sweaters for this, and this is probably due a wash soon, and also probably is due a depilling, which I can't remember if I've done, but nevertheless, you can see I feel like this, for me, for something that's that soft, this is all quite minimal, like you can see a little bit here, but like it's not massive, is it? The yarn is still in pretty good condition, and that for me is always a good sign. This is not a sweater that I love the fit of. I think you can even see it when I stand close like this. The gauge, it could have used an extra strand just to thicken it up a little bit, and obviously I didn't add that. But it's very comfortable and it's very faff free to wear, and so this is one of those sweaters that I tend to wear in my home office. I still work from home at least 4 days a week, so I do spend a lot of time just sitting in my own house and trying to save on heating, etc. This is brilliant. There are a few things, whenever I posted it in like Facebook knitting groups, I often get asked, were the sleeves really that wide? And I guess you could have knitted the ribbing tighter. I do knit ribbing loose, so that's also why you get these like nice floppy sleeves. And second of all, I do think the colour is a bit awkward. It kind of just like stands, it doesn't really do much for me, I don't think. But I feel like this is another one I probably need to just wash and then put an elastic through the very top just to bring it in a little bit. But it's definitely a sweater that I'm not upset that I have knit. It's very comfy, but probably wouldn't make another one because I generally don't wear anything this big a gauge anymore. So that was project number 3. Now we hit a point where in between this, I'm just going to grab the wine. Cheers in whatever you're drinking. We now hit a point that a big goal I had going into 2022 was that I had at that point done most of the things I felt like you kind of had to do. Like I'd done all sorts of different sweater constructions, like I'd done saddle shoulder style, I'd done raglan, I'd done drop shoulder, like circular yoke, I'd done bottom up, top down, I'd done folded collars, I'd done not folded collars, I'd done all sorts of like cast-offs, and I was really comfortable with 2-pillar. I'd done lace from a chart, I'd done all over pattern, I'd done Colorwork. Like I really feel like if you had like a list of techniques that you should know, I really feel like I'd tick most of those boxes, but there was one major box that I did not, I couldn't do, and that was small circumference knitting. I never saw myself as like a sock knitter, and prior to this year I feel like I kind of didn't see the point of sock knitting, if I'm perfectly honest. I felt like it was something, you know, people are like, oh yes, I have this like completely set pattern, and you know, people who knit like loads and loads of socks, and I always felt like with all of that time I could have knitted so many garments. But as we went into this year, I really wanted to get better with small circumference knitting, also because I felt like it would put me in a much better place to knit some things. So like sometimes for the end of sleeves I was using double pointed needles and we weren't always getting on. So yes, all of this to say that this was the year of the sock saga, which I've brought up a few times in my podcast episodes, and I finished my first sock and I no longer have it. I essentially knitted one sock in a baby size, and then I went on to the adult size. I then went on to knit the adult version. So these are the Sunday socks from Petite Knit. These have been pulled out of the wash pile, so you can probably see we have like felting here. Heel's still looking sort of decent, could probably use a deep pilk in it. These have also, we have to go all the way up here. Can you tell? I can't even tell if you can tell. It has like a slight glitter through it. So this yarn is from the brand Novita, and this is I think the DK weight is no, this wasn't DK weight, this was Erin weight. I do not remember the name of this particular yarn. It will be on my Ravelry. So for all of these projects, I discovered last year that I cannot link all the details that I usually do, which is the pattern, all the yarns with colours and where I purchased them from if still available, and usually also a link to the Ravelry project page, but I cannot fit in the description box. Last year I actually ran out of word count, which I think was quite impressive. So if there's anything you'd really like to know and you're not a fan of Ravelry for whatever reason, you don't have to tell me, then you can just leave a comment down below and I'll let you know and check it myself. But otherwise, all of these projects are on my Ravelry page, which is always linked down below. And they will also be linked on the respective podcast episodes that they relate to. So these were my first pair of socks. The Sunday socks is kind of perceived, at least when I have asked, to be like, these are the perfect like vanilla socks, and I do like them, but there are a few things I'm maybe not that keen on. Personally, I don't think this heel flap and gusset looks very neat, and I don't think it does on anyone's. In general, I don't think the heel flap and gusset is that nice, and especially not this that is pure stock in it. Second of all, I have found, and I think I could see myself knitting more, but these just feel a little bit big to me. Now my gran, I'm just going to show you, my gran is also a big sock knitter, and these were knitted by her in what looks like thinner yarn, and they kind of have the same fit as these. You can tell she always knits the leg extra long for me because I like long socks, and both of these have the same kind of thing, which is, and I think this was the intention of the Sunday socks, so you kind of can't blame them for doing what it says on the tin. But you know, originally she knitted them up in Peruvian Highland wool, and they're kind of meant to be like a, instead of wearing actual slippers, you wear something like this, and that's what I feel like the fit of these are. So I like them, but I maybe don't love them as much as I was quite proud of finishing them. And I'm fairly certain that somewhere around this time I finished the second sock of the baby pair, which I did knit in Peruvian Highland wool in like a brown colour in the baby size, but I have given them away because my best friend is having a baby boy. No babies on the way here, before anyone asks. Clearly I'm drinking wine, so I just didn't see the point in keeping something I don't know when we'd use, if we'd use them. We're still in the kind of like small things category, so this was some scrap yarn. I had most of the yarn I'd bought myself, but some of it was gifted from my friend Simona at Knit, and this was knitted in full Colorwork Peruvian Highland wool in the colour Merlot, which is a melange, and what that just means is that the colour, I don't know how well you can tell, I always apologise if you can hear the barking dogs, it isn't just like one colour, it has like a slight, almost like a little tiny hint of purple through it. It's really stunning. And I knitted this with leftovers from a sweater, and this is the school run hat by my lovely friend Penrose Knits, or Laura, and this is just a headband. So this is what it looks like. I don't know how to show this off, especially not with the fringe, but as you can tell, for me at least, it has that kind of perfect height to keep my hair out and keep my ears warm, but it stays quite tight. And this is actually my second one. I already knitted one the year, like when this was in testnet, which I knitted in marzipan, actually leftover yarn from the same project. But when I was home in Denmark at Christmas, my auntie saw it and she just really liked it, and in contrast to me, she has dark brown hair, and I think the marzipan suited her much better, so I decided to make my own. And this is hands down one of my absolute most worn knits, because I wear this as soon as the weather turns cold on every single dog walk, unless I'm wearing headphones. Like sometimes we go for sniffy walks I wear headphones, but that means this is worn several times a week. And as you might be able to tell, shows absolutely no wear and tear. I don't know if people would find Peruvian Highland wool scratchy. I certainly do not. I think it's a nice soft yarn, so would recommend. These are called the biscuit socks, and I think they're from Isabel Handmade, I think the designer was, so you can see them here. They have like a little 1x1 cuff up here, did Italian cast on, and then it has this like biscuit pattern. Yeah, you can see it here, just a few purl stitches every few rows. Then it has whatever this type of heel is called. You can actually see how much it's felted, but you can see the pattern still up here, which is done by slipping stitches on one side for Marie. The pattern is free, and then it continues down the foot with just pure stockinette. These are also knit in Novita yarn, and I don't know if it kind of speaks for itself, but at first I really liked them, but I find quite quickly they lose their shape and they become loose on your foot, which I hate. They are DK weight socks, but yeah, I think I'm just coming to realise my feet don't suit a heel flap and gusset. I think I much prefer the way a short row heel fits on my foot. I also have quite small feet for my height. So yeah, I'm not the biggest fan. They have been worn, but I don't think they have been worn to like warrant this level of felting. So I have some Novita yarn left in my stash, but when that's out, I think that's me for Novita yarns. Right, then we have the next project, which I got the yarn for at Christmas time from the designer, as this was a test knit, and this took effort to knit. So I'm just going to put it on. So for full transparency, the yarn for this was sponsored from Camisole, which is Camisole does sound a very, very strong Copenhagen. It's more like, my accent would be more like Camisole. You get my point. Anyway, it's that shop no one knows how to say that does lots of hair dyed yarn that Petite Knit often uses. And that's who sponsored this. This is their pure silk in the colour Pink Fluff, which in real life I feel like is a slightly nicer, vibrant pink. It's in the light in here, it looks quite see-through. I don't think it's like that at all, and I probably wouldn't wear it with black in real life. This is the office tee from Nicoletta, my lovely knitting friend as well, and this is knitted on a 3mm needle and took forever because it is a fingering weight t-shirt. Now I do love the construction. You can see it has like, similar to my office sweater, it has like what's the word? This almost saddle shoulder, almost not, and then it goes into full raglan. Yeah, the fit is really, really lovely. Now, I stupidly knitted this too short, and I honestly just couldn't face going back on it. I reached a point with this because no matter how much you knit, it just felt like this never grew. And obviously you're always working to deadline when someone is trying to release a pattern. So if we do the belly button, my belly button is right here, and I do wish it was more like here. This is also another one of those that I kind of wish I'd picked a more neutral colour, because I don't think this pink is actually something that has fitted that well into my wardrobe. And this was another expensive lesson that, not expensive because obviously the yarn was sponsored, but it was another lesson that it's okay to pick more neutrals, even though people much prefer colour. You know, sometimes it's hard when yarn you kind of notice yourself is bright. So yeah, this hasn't had, I think I worn it a few times. I wore it to see Ed Sheeran actually, which was nice. But yeah, I'd love to find a bit more wear for it. Basically, it also, after Sheeran, where I maybe drank a little bit too much, I felt like it needed a good wash, and I just took a little bit of time before I got around to washing it, which is also why it hasn't had that much wear. So now that that's done, on to another small project. Also, please excuse the state of these socks. These also just pulled out of the laundry basket, because these are my absolute favourite socks. The fit on these is just everything I really wanted. So I will show you the construction of them. You have a 2x2 dentist top down. You have a 2x2 ribbing up here, and it goes into these like faux cables. You have a lovely short row heel, and then you have what is called an anatomical toe. So you can see this is the left foot because there's more decreases here on the left. These are the Soulmate socks from Woolly Knit. And I got the pattern when I purchased their sock yarn, which is what this is knitted in. Now, oops, almost dropped them. I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to fully represent this colour in real life. Is like such a cool tone pink that it is like, well, it's such a, it's grey but with like a pink hint, sorry, to it. It's in the colour mink. And yes, these are everything I wanted all my hand knitted socks to be. And they didn't, I think they used less than half a coin from memory. The Woolly Knit yarn is really, really affordable, and I know some people aren't that keen on it. It's definitely a little bit tough when you knit it, but when I say I have worn these on dog walks, in every single shoe, I've done literally nothing to keep them this nice. And I might have de-pilled them once, but it's been a long time ago. So if you look at the heel, we really do have minimal wear, and it's down here on this part of the foot is where we have the worst. And I think for a pair of socks that you wear in shoes, and you know, especially when your feet get sweaty, essentially you create a warm environment that has lots of friction. So it's no wonder if they pill, and they're still excellent. So definitely one of my favourites. Now we reach an era that I feel like took up a lot of my time this year. I got contacted, I feel like around the time we got Faitler the first time, from the designer My Favourite Things Knitwear. And at the time she basically just wrote me a message to say that she had followed me for a while, thought I made some really lovely posts, and if I'd want to test knit for her someday. And I said yes. And then if you watched last year's when we got Faitler our dog, I basically just took some time away from knitting. She's like flat out asleep. So yeah, I just took some time away from knitting. And so it just kind of never really came to fruition. Then she asked me, I had a test knit on, and I do not remember what the test knit was for. I had something on my needles that led me to say no to the first design she offered, and I was like, oh, maybe she won't ask again. It was the one that's like sweater number 8. It's like the same kind of faux cables and an all over like ribbed sweater. Unfortunately, wasn't able to do it at the time for whatever reason. And then I had this one she asked if I'd knit, which was exactly what I'd hoped she would. The yarn for this was sponsored by Knitting for Olive, and this is a sweater number 20. As I said, by my favourite things knitwear. I will have knitted the largest size, which is size 3, for reference of how much extra fabric that is. I don't know if you can tell, but this one's oversized. It is this all over cable pattern. The drop shoulder design, you can see right here what I picked up for the shoulders. Personally think it's quite a neat job. Then you have the sleeves. You have these big wide sleeves from memory. Oh, there are a few decreases, but clearly very few because the sleeves are very wide. I knitted this in Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino in the colour Nordic Beach, and my mohair colour, I also held a strand of soft silk mohair, in what I think was the colour Putty, but I might be wrong. It's just a neutral. Nordic Beach is exactly what I hoped it would be. It is turning up a little bit more brown here than I think it does in real life. It is like a very greyish beige, and it's been very wearable. I've worn this a lot, especially when it's like summer when it was cold, especially, you know, when you sit typing in an office all day. I find you can get even colder, and also like in very early autumn. Now here in deep winter it has not been worn as much because this is quite a deep V, and I find I actually just get a cold chest. My chest feels cold just standing here. So therefore this kind of just has a specific season it gets used. But I love the fit of this V. She offers 2 options, so she has a longer V-neck option, but I went for the shorter one, and I think it is just stunning. I love it. We all know how much most of Knitting Instagram absolutely loves petite knit. Now, I very much like petite knit as well. As you can tell, I do knit some of her patterns, but I'm not sure she's like my all-time favourite designer, and sometimes I find that when she has new designs come out, I don't get them at first. Over time I often grow to like them, but often there has been a few designs that the first time they came up was not for me. So the first one for me was the zipper sweater. Just didn't understand why anyone would go through all that faff to knit a sweater to put a zipper in it when you could literally buy that style everywhere. And for full transparency, that is 100% on my knit list for next year. Just need to make sure I pick the right yarn. And these were also on the list. The penny gloves. I thought the penny gloves were some of the most overrated things when they first came around on Knitting Instagram. And then I started walking a dog, my dog, quite a lot in all sorts of weather. And I have, if you didn't know, I have a degree in psychology, and I am a canine psychology nerd. And I'm proud of that. So when we take Fela for walks, I believe in reinforcing positive behaviour, right? Teaching her when you do something good, you get good attention, instead of just teaching her when you do something bad, you get bad attention. So she essentially gets treats on every single walks, and she goes through quite a lot of treats, and that makes it quite hard to wear gloves, because if you wear gloves then you can't really grab the small treats. And so the penny glove serves kind of like an in-between for me. These therefore also need a wash. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but I feel like especially on one of them, especially the left hand, which is the usual treat hand, tends to get a little bit grubby, so they'll probably do a wash. But they are the most simple construction. You start down here, you have like a nice rolled edge here, and then you do some increases for a thumb, do the same kind of thingamabob with that rolled edge, and that's literally it. They are not advanced at all, but I actually find that they're quite comfortable because they're nice and roomy, first of all, and in contrast to socks, I think for gloves I quite like that these are a little bit more roomy. I added a bit of extra length from memory because this distance on my hand must have been a little bit longer, but I just wanted a little bit more length. And when I actually go for walks, the main way that I wear them is that I do this. I tuck in my hands like this, and it keeps them nice and toasty. Sometimes I even tuck in my thumb, but it means I can quickly grab a treat like this and then roll them back up. So they're perfect for that. I knitted these in Phil Karoline Saga in a light grey, which was a ball Simona sent with yarn before. I think you can even call it like influencer gifted, because it was before anyone knew who I was. I was just curious how Saga would feel, which is 100% lamb's wool, and it's amazing. And one strand of Phil Karoline Tilia in pure white, which is why they are just like quite fluffy. And similar to the headband, every single time it has been possible to wear these. These have been worn this year. You can see a little bit of pilling there, but in general I think they're pretty good. So massive hit. Probably needs a wash. Now we have another test knit. This is Camisole number 7, I think. Camisole number 7. This full transparency yarn was also sponsored by this, for this, by Knitting for Olive, and I feel like the front here is coming apart a little bit. It's an end I could use a better trim. This was also a test knit from for the lovely Louise from My Favourite Things Knitwear. This is knitted in one strand of Knitting for Olive merino and one strand of Knitting for Olive pure silk. I don't remember the colours anymore, but it's just this nice ripped design. Probably wouldn't wear them with the lace cami underneath, but you get the gist. And I am now going to put on the next item, which I will cut out the changing into. Obviously I have extra layers in, so there's going to be some nice folds. But hopefully you can see them. So these are the matching shorts. These are also ribbed. These are knitted in the same yarn combo, and first of all I think you can almost tell that they are very very high-waisted if I don't sort of rejig them. I do think the inner thigh length however is quite good. Like, you know, there's no bum cheek hanging out here for sure, which is always good. Now the thing is, before I first washed them, I actually think they hugged my bum quite well, because I think what I'm finding now that they're done is that this pot is quite loose, and I'm not a small bummed lady, and I just find it almost makes me look bigger than I am. That didn't really sit right. Now these are freshly washed, because I had one full wear out of them, and you can almost start to see what's going to happen as I wear them in, which is this is freshly washed as well. That ribbing gross, and what's going to happen is that in about 2-3 hours these shorts are going to look 2 sizes bigger on me, and that means that what sort of works for the fit right now just doesn't work. And that's not the pattern's fault. I think it's really neatly done. I just wish I'd sized down 2 sizes maybe, because I still think you would have had that look, but that you would have had a slightly better fit potentially. Now I also made a mistake which I cannot unsee, which is I messed up my increase rates or something. Can't remember what it was, and I dropped some stitches. It created a hole. I tried to stitch it together. Doesn't look very neat. Not very happy with it. So I feel like the top is a big hit and I really like it. The shorts I would knit again, but I'd knit differently and make some changes. And what else is there to say about them? The funny thing is that this is probably one of the colours and sets that I feel like had the most success this year, and I'm not a blue person. I own blue things. Like, I seem to have 3 different dresses now where the main sort of like accent colour is blue, but that's basically all the blue I own, and I'm not drawn to it. And I find the same a bit with this, that I'm not enough of a blue person to really get the use out of this. So I'm hoping this one I wore quite a lot when summer was here, because it's low enough that your armpits can breathe, but it's not like really scandalous. But yeah, I wanted this set to look more like flashing on me than I feel like it has ended up. Let's get you back to the wall. Oh, lovely wine teeth. Is that right? Yes, I think so. Maybe a little bit more sealing. You have to live with it. We now hit a lull in my knitting. After I finished those 2, I actually said yes to another test knit for my favourite things knitwear, which I still haven't finished. It should be doable this year, but hasn't yet been done. And after that, I kind of said yes to that test knit, and it's another 3mm needle fingering weights on my project. And I've learnt my lesson. It's just not a project. It's not a type of project that brings me joy. I find them really sluggish. They move too slow for me. So I kind of got stuck in that. I was tired around the wedding, then we went away, yada yada, bit fail, I got spayed. Basically I just went into like a long period of time where I only knitted a few rounds every day, and if that, some days I didn't knit at all. So we've also kind of hit the point that up until now we are basically in July, so we're at the 6 months mark. And I don't have the pile to show you, but I'm just going to be honest and say we have definitely, this was the first part of the year, that was the productive part, and we're now hitting a lot more of a slower season. Now, the first thing I sort of finished in this slower season is this. This is the Karoline sweater by Knitting for Olive. This isn't very size inclusive, which Knitting for Olive I would say is now. So I do apologise about that, but basically I'd already kind of bought the pattern and I spent ages not knowing what I wanted this yarn to become. This was quite old yarn in my stash, and I know that because I had deliberately bought this combination because I wanted to avoid mohair, and I no longer have as strong feelings about mohair as I once did. I now quite like it, so yeah, things change. This is what it's like. It has this very, very long roll neck that I sometimes wear like a real roll neck, but then I get a little double chin, and sometimes I just flip it in like this. Kind of has this like high neck look. I knitted it more cropped than I planned as usual. Always cast off too quickly. The sleeves are incredibly tight and only just fit over my watch, which not the smartest move. The sleeves just have quite a tight cuff, and here you can see what the yarn combo. This is like, I'm sure, next to soft skin to basically anyone who isn't wool sensitive. However, you do pay a price for it. So this is Filcolana Nina, which is like a Vetta, but it has no nylon in it. And then, so it's superwash merino wool, essentially. And then the second strand is Fibre Spates Cumulus. And I know the colour for that is Onyx. And I think the Nina colour is Charcoal. And that creates this like almost black, but very dark grey. But yeah, can you see that? Definitely needs a depeel. Now, I can't remember if I've peeled this. I don't think so. It hasn't been worn a million times though. It has been worn a few times, but it's definitely not my most worn sweater this year. And this sleeve is just as bad. So I think it's great if you're sensitive to wool, but I have refined my tastes, let's put it that way, and I'm definitely more into like woolier wools than this is, and so I feel like I'd rather trade off a bit of the softness for less pilling. I should also say I had quite a lot of waist decreases, and I think that looks really flattering. My frame huts the ladies quite nicely without adding too much bulk right around this section that I think many women are sensitive about, me included. So yeah, I think that was quite nice. Don't know if I love the fit. It is a saddle shoulder, as you can see here, but I don't know. It's not bad, it's not perfect. I like the colour. I think it will get used because it's quite neutral, but would probably pick something different now. Next thing I made was more leftover yarn from when I made this as well. So we are, this is Vulcana Peruvian Highland wool in the colour Merlot. And I made the Pearl Soho Bandana cowl, which is a free Soho pattern, Pearl Soho pattern. And it looks like this. It has a garter stitch border, then it's knit and stockinette. Obviously you can see the reverse is reverse stockinette. And essentially the construction is fairly simple. You cast on, you do some short rows, you do some decreases, and then you cast off, and that's you. It's not the most like interesting piece, but it is incredibly practical, because when I wear something like the V-neck sweater number 20, if I put something like this on, my chest just stays a little bit warmer. On top of that, it's great for doing this with if it's like really cold and rainy. It just stops all the rain and wind. But at the same time, I don't know if you can tell, but it's not like, it doesn't cling to your neck. So it's kind of in between something that like breaks the wind with something that provides warmth. And I find I often just sit around wearing this because it's that kind of practical. It isn't the most stylish item I've ever knitted, and to be completely honest, I'm still not sure I love the look of it on, but I love the wear of it. It's really practical, and another one of those items that just lives by Fela's leash, ready to go on a dog walk at any one time. So we have that, and then we are starting to reach the end, which is good because I have been recording for almost an hour, which is a long time, isn't it? More wine. Here we have my final pair of socks for the year. These are the Morrison socks, I think by a lady called Jenny Blumenstein, something like that. I honestly can't remember. I found this pattern on Ravelry, liked the look of it and bought it. And so it has this like cables going down the front, and quite standard heel flap and gusset, and I think maybe this is ripped. Probably better see that on the reverse. No, maybe not. Maybe just a standard heel flap and gusset. This is a paid for pattern. I knitted this in Angora Farms Moyhan Shetland blend. So they Angora Field. Can't remember, I go through this every time. I basically, let's rewind. So these are knitted in Angora Field yarn, which might be some different combination of words, don't remember. I found them at the Perth Yarn Festival, and I just really liked chatting to them, and it was one of those stalls where I'd been standing chatting, and I did not need a full project, but I thought that my hair is, as far as I have heard, not a bad non-nylon sock alternative. I wanted to see what it was all like knitted up, and you know, I have another skein that I bought the same day, but I thought for 2 skeins it wasn't the cheapest, but it also wasn't the most expensive, and I was quite excited to support a farm that have they have their own Angora goats, so that's what makes my hair. That's Angora goats, not to be confused with Angora rabbits that create the Angora fibre. Could have named it 2 different things, but what do I know? Anyway, so I bought it then. These have some of the same struggles that my other socks have. Don't like the heel flap and gusset, we've already established that. They are a little bit big, and I do find when wearing them, they do slip off my feet a little bit. I discovered quite early on that my hair might be a nylon alternative, but I'm not sure it would be a full-time replacement for me. You can see here, it's like pilling around the heel. These I'm fairly certain I did depill. They were also ready to be washed. But yeah, they were in the pile to be washed, but now I might put them on because they are really warm. So these are a bit like the Sunday socks. They are like to be worn in the house. You can actually see right here in the light, I think you could see it just before, I'm certain, right there. You can actually see how the heel is slightly lighter from where it started to felt. And if I turn them, I can feel that putting my hand in them just now. Do you see all this on the inside? How much it's felted up here. Probably should just give them a wash, shouldn't I? Stop being so stubborn. So yes, I can live with that though. You know, sometimes you make projects that are to be worn all the time, and sometimes you make things that are also a bit for the memories more than anything. I have to say this yarn is stunning, and if I was to buy any sweater quantities in the near future and I had the budget for it, I would 100% buy their yarns. I think they're really stunning, and this has made me a lot more confident about knitting up a project in Shetland wool, which is something that is down Blueface Leicester are quite readily available. I do have a project lined up in Blueface Leicester, which again feels really soft, feels like merino to me, so I'm quite excited to discover more truly domestic. Some would probably argue that the Falkland Island merino is domestic. I think it's distance travelled from where I am. I feel like Blueface Leicester and Shetland is a lot more sustainable, so I'd love to discover more of that. And also this halo is, in my opinion, stunning. I think on a garment you would still get the occasional pilling, but I don't think you'd get the same kind of wear. You have to remember that these poor socks have been worn in boots on dog walks. One time I hadn't actually planned to take Vela for a long walk, and then I did, and the pilling was quite severe, so that was also my own fault. I just spent about 3 minutes trying to get fluff out of my lips. Wasn't really working. Not sure why I wore sticky lip gloss for this video. Actually, I do know. I tried a much darker colour on because, as you know, if you've been here for a while, I love a dark lippy, but it just didn't look right. Wasn't feeling it. So I put a bit more, I don't know if you can tell, put a bit more glitter on my eyes and then put on a lip gloss. Anywho, back to what we're all here for, the knitting. This is another test knit yarn sponsored by Knitting for Olive. This is Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino and Soft Silk My Hair in 2 grey colours that one stone grey and the other one's lead. I can't remember which one's which, but it's like a medium grey. You can see the colour. This is knitted drop shoulder construction. You can see the nice increased line here along the back, and then you pick up stitches, knit the back and front, pick up the sleeves, pick up the neckband, etc, etc. Quite a classic construction, not too dissimilar from Louise's sweater number 11. However, this one has completely straight sleeves, and I think she's changed a few other bits, obviously the neckline, etc. I'm not completely clued up with the details. However, this is probably already one of my most worn sweaters. This is what I put on when I don't know what to wear. When I wake up and I'm like, I kind of want to wear a knitted sweater, whether I'm going out for something, staying in the house, I'm working from home, I'm going for a dog walk, etc. But I don't want to wear this, I don't want to wear that. This is always what I have returned to since I finished it. So this has been incredibly successful. The way it works when I test knit for Louise, I do sometimes get asked, this is how I ended up on that list. Louise writes to me and says, I have this coming up. Would you want to test it? And then I say yes or no, depending. And then she tells me the yarn, the deadline, all of this. Unless, of course, I ask what the deadline is, right? Like, then she will tell me. But when she wrote to ask about this, I had basically decided that I didn't need to do any more test knits, because at this point I did have a few lined up, at least one, and I just wanted a bit of a break, wanted to knit through my stash, all of this. And then I basically stewed over it. Like, I looked at the design and thought about what it'd make, like what colour I'd make, and I made the decision that I did not have anything in this colour. I have a darker grey sweater, I have a light grey cardigan, but I didn't have anything in this perfect medium grey. Like something you just wear to pair of, like with a pair of jeans, with a pair of black leggings, etc. Just easy, faff-free. So I decided that's what I was going to do, and I don't know what happened. I think it's because she extended the size range, but essentially it took some time for me to get the voucher code to order the yarn, and before the yarn arrived the deadline was a week away, so I hadn't completely finished the sweater by the deadline, but it didn't take long after. So I knitted quite a significant chunk of this sweater in a week, so it was quite quick now. And I just love it. This has never been de-pilled, and this, as I've said, this has been worn like I own no other sweaters, right? This is as like heavily worn as it gets, and it has worn beautifully. Now this doesn't really I'll show you the armpit here. Oh, looks pretty good, doesn't it? This didn't really surprise me, because it was actually obviously I used this yarn combo for my sweater number 20, which I've also worn loads, head nowhere. So this is my favourite, and honestly, as soon as I'm done filming this, I will be putting this and my pyjama bottoms on, and this is what I'll sit on the sofa knitting and drinking wine with. And also I think it's a really good thing, and I told her that too, that she added more sizes. So this is slightly more size inclusive than many of the other patterns. I think it goes up to 4XL. However, this is incredibly oversized, and I would say that if I was to knit it again, I could easily have knit a size down from this. I think this is an XL, if not 2 sizes, and it would still have like quite a similar look, I think. So just to say, if you are knitting it, it's obviously meant to be oversized, but I think you can quite easily adjust how oversized it is, especially if you just want the casual look, but maybe not as big a casual look. My final finished project of the year, besides one penny glove, which I've left downstairs because it's not full set yet, so I feel like it doesn't count. This is the Kerr sweater, designed by my very lovely and talented friend Rebecca, and it has a drop shoulder design as well, and the classic knit front back, pick up, sleeves and neckline, etc. And this is what it looks like. I have another sweater that I have 1.5 sleeves left to go before that's finished, and that's my next test knit. Oh, it has a little bit of a tight neckline, but once it's on, I don't find it that noticeable. And this is, I think you need to take down maybe a little bit. Yeah, this is what it looks like. It has the Colorwork across the front, the back, and I had quite strong feelings about my mistakes in the latest podcast episode. It's funny because every time I put them on, I'm just looking in basically the viewfinder, and I love the look of it. Like, it's just so pretty. It's just effortless. Look, I added quite a lot of length. Belly button comparison. If I was wearing a pair of jeans mid-rise, they would reach the jeans, which was my intention. And then we have fairly long sleeves. Again, have learnt my lesson now, always knit a lot longer sleeves. I should have knitted a size up. I do think it would be nicer if it had a little bit more give. In the last episode where I shared this finished object, I did say that another thing I would have changed is I wish the Colorwork wasn't so tight, and it seemed that no amount of blocking got rid of it. Rebecca has suggested that I try and block it again, so I might try and do that and see if it gets better. And several of you mentioned if I'd gone up a needle size, and yes, I had. I should just have gone up more, but I was in a bit of a time rush and kind of rushed through finishing it, so really my own mistakes. Therefore, I'm still undecided if I'll keep it. I have been quite drawn to wearing it. I really like the yarn. It's woolly but wearable, but yeah, I'll wait and see. I'm going to stew on it a little bit before I make a decision if it's a sweater that gets to stay. The yarn is, this main colour is Woolly Knit Cream Neb British Wool. So it has these little nibs in it, as you can tell. And the Colorwork is Isa Alpaca 1 and 2 in 4S, which is their very, very dark grey. Ta-da! So that is all. That is everything I had to show you. I have just sat down, managed to trying to re-angle the camera. I managed to make it fall out of the tripod, which is no good, but that's all I've finished this year. As I said, I feel like my main takeaways from this year is to knit more things for the home office and to stick with the neutrals. And finally, I think this year I have done quite a few test knits, and I think I'm a little bit test knitted out. I love to contribute to the knitting community, whether that's posting on Instagram or making these YouTube videos, but I think I'm ready to just knit what I want. And if a project, when I get started, doesn't take my fancy, then I can just stop and move on. So those are sort of the main 3 resolutions I have for the next year. And if you watched all this way, I'd love to know what your 3 ones are, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!